Ghostly tales, yet mirrors of human life. Hey, everyone! Welcome to Encountering Chinese. Ghostly Tales from Liao Zhai. Today, I'm going to tell you a story called Painted Skin. In folklore, it's commonly believed that after death, humans might transform into ghosts, but not all ghosts and monsters are formed from human spirits. Some ghosts and monsters might originate from the waters or mountains, known as spirits. These entities often possess bizarre appearances, vastly different from humans, yet through prolonged cultivation, they've acquired human-like wisdom. Some malevolent spirits and creatures go to great lengths to assume human forms, seducing humans and seizing opportunities to harm or devour them. And today, we're going to talk about one such wicked creature. Please be advised. This story is rather spooky, so if you, like me, are afraid of ghosts and ghouls, I recommend listening during daylight hours. Also, be aware that certain parts of the story might make you feel uneasy. It's best to avoid listening during meal times. Once upon a time in Taiyuan, there was a scholar named Wang. Let's call him Wang Sheng for now. One early morning, as Wang Sheng was walking along the road, he noticed a young woman ahead of him, carrying a bundle and hurrying along with a look of distress. Wang Sheng hastened his steps and caught up with her. As he approached the woman and looked closer, he noticed that she appeared to be around 16 or 17 years old, exceptionally beautiful, which made him increasingly fond of her. Wang Sheng inquired, "Miss, why are you alone on the road so early in the morning?" The woman replied, "You're just a passerby, unable to share my worries, so why bother asking?" Wang Sheng insisted, "Well, what's troubling you? If there's a wish of yours that I can fulfill, I won't hesitate to help." The woman said with a sorrowful expression, "My parents were greedy for money and sold me to a wealthy family as a concubine. However, the primary wife of that household is extremely jealous. She often scolds and beats me day and night. I can't endure it any longer. Now, I just want to escape far away." Wang Sheng continued, "Where do you plan to go now?" The woman replied, "I'm a fugitive, so I don't have a definite destination." Wang Sheng said, "My home is not far from here. You can stay there temporarily, and I hope you won't mind the simplicity of my house." Unexpectedly, the woman agreed eagerly. Thus, Wang Sheng helped her carry her belongings and led her back to his home. As they entered the house, the woman looked around and noticed no one else was there. She asked Wang Sheng, "Why don't you have any family members?" Wang Sheng answered, "This is my study." The woman smiled and said, "This place is wonderful. If you're willing to show me kindness and let me live, I'll be extremely grateful. Please promise to keep it a secret and not reveal to anyone that I'm staying here." Wang Sheng readily agreed. That night, Wang Sheng unexpectedly ended up living with the woman in a manner similar to husband and wife. Wang Sheng concealed the woman in his study, and many days passed without any of their neighbors knowing. Eventually, Wang Sheng mentioned this matter to his wife. Upon hearing about it, his wife Chun suspected that the woman might be a concubine fleeing from a prominent family, and she advised Wang Sheng to send her away. However, Wang Sheng stubbornly refused. One day, while wandering around the market, Wang Sheng coincidentally encountered a Taoist priest. The priest was taken aback and asked him, "Have you met anyone unusual recently?" Wang Sheng replied, "No." The Taoist looked at him closely and said, "You're surrounded by evil energy. How can you say you haven't met anyone?" Wang Sheng vehemently defended himself, claiming that he hadn't encountered anyone strange. The Taoist, seeing Wang Sheng's stubbornness, sighed and left while muttering to himself, "I just don't understand. Even when faced with death, there are those who remain willfully ignorant." Wang Sheng found his words rather extraordinary and began to doubt the woman living in his house. However, he quickly dismissed his suspicions, thinking that the woman was clearly a beautiful and delicate young lady. How could she possibly be a monster? He thought to himself that the Taoist might have been trying to use the situation to extort money by pretending to exorcise spirits and monsters. Lost in thought, Wang Sheng arrived at his own front gate. He found the door locked from the inside, preventing him from entering. He started to doubt the woman's actions and, climbing over a broken wall, jumped into the yard. To his surprise, the door to the study was also tightly shut. He stealthily approached the window and peered inside. He saw a grotesque and ferocious demon standing in the center of the study. The demon had a bluish complexion, sharp and long teeth resembling saw teeth. It was spreading out a piece of human skin on the bed and using a colorful brush to paint on it. After finishing the painting, the demon tossed aside the brush, lifted the human skin, and draped it over itself. In an instant, the hideous demon transformed back into a beautiful woman. Seeing all of this, Wang Sheng was overcome with fear. His legs went weak, and he couldn't stand. He crawled out like a wild animal. He fled the yard and immediately went searching for the Taoist he had met earlier. However, the Taoist was nowhere to be found. Wang Sheng searched everywhere and finally encountered the Taoist in the outskirts. Falling to his knees before the Taoist, Wang Sheng earnestly begged for help. The Taoist agreed, saying, "All right then. Let me drive it away." However, this demon has also cultivated for a long time, and it just found a suitable piece of human skin for shaping. It could easily reincarnate as a human. I can't bear to just destroy it like this. The Taoist handed Wang Sheng a duster and instructed him to hang it at the entrance to his bedroom. As they parted, the Taoist agreed to meet Wang Sheng at a nearby temple after the matter was resolved, where Wang Sheng would return the feather duster to the Taoist. After returning home, Wang Sheng was too afraid to enter his study and could only retreat to his bedroom. He hung the duster at the entrance of his bedroom as instructed. At midnight, he suddenly heard rustling sounds outside the door. Wang Sheng was so frightened that he couldn't even bring himself to look, so he had his wife secretly take a peek to see what was happening. His wife peered out of the window and saw the woman from the study approaching the bedroom. The woman looked up and saw the duster hanging at the entrance. She dared not enter and stood outside, seething with anger. She glared at the duster with frustration for a long time before finally leaving. However, after a while, the woman returned. She shouted angrily, "That Taoist is trying to scare me. I won't give up so easily. Should I spit out the meat I've eaten?" After speaking, she unexpectedly took down the feather duster and tore it into pieces, then slammed into the bedroom door, charging inside. As soon as the demon entered the bedroom, it climbed onto Wang Xing's bed, tore open his chest, and dug out his heart before leaving. Wang Xing's wife saw all of this and began to cry out in high-pitched wails. Hearing the cries of his wife, the servants rushed into the bedroom with candles. They saw Wang Xing lying dead, his abdomen a mess of blood and flesh. Wang Xing's wife, Chen, suppressed her screams and cried in extreme horror, but she could only swallow her tears. Early the next morning, Chen sent Wang Xing's younger brother, Erlang, to inform the Taoist. When the Taoist heard the news, he said indignantly, "I pitied that demon for having cultivated a human form, but I never expected it to become so brazen." So, the Taoist immediately accompanied Wang Xing's younger brother to Wang Xing's house. However, they discovered that the demon had already disappeared. The Taoist looked around and said, "Luckily, it hasn't gone far." Then he asked, "Who lives in the southern courtyard?" Wang Erlang answered, "It's my family's residence." The Taoist said, "The demon is in your house now." Wang Erlang was greatly astonished, thinking there was no way that could be true. The Taoist asked him, "Has an unfamiliar person ever been to your house?" Wang Erlang replied, "Early this morning, an old lady came to our house. She wanted to be a servant, and my wife took pity on her and allowed her to stay. She's still at our house and hasn't left yet." The Taoist said, "That's right, it's her." So everyone went to Wang Erlang's house together. The Taoist held a wooden sword and stood in Wang Erlang's courtyard. He shouted towards the house, "Evil demon, return my duster." The old lady inside the house heard the shouts from outside and panicked. She rushed out of the house, intending to escape. The Taoist caught up to her and struck her with the wooden sword. The old lady was knocked down, and her skin split open, revealing the true form of the demon. It lay on the ground, wailing like a pig. The Taoist then chopped off the demon's head with the wooden sword. The decapitated demon turned into a thick smoke and gathered into a pile on the ground. The Taoist took out a gourd, removed the stopper, and placed it in the smoke. There was a swooshing sound from the mouth of the gourd, as if someone were inhaling. In an instant, the smoke was completely sucked into the gourd. The Taoist plugged the gourd with the stopper and put it into his bag. Everyone then looked at the piece of human skin on the ground and saw that it had eyebrows, eyes, hands, and feet. The Taoist rolled up the piece of human skin as if rolling up a painting. After rolling it up, he placed the skin into his bag, said his goodbyes, and prepared to leave. Witnessing all of this, Wang Xing's wife, Chen, knelt before the Taoist, crying and begging him to use his magic to bring her husband back to life. The Taoist shook his head, indicating that he was incapable of doing so. Chen was even more distressed, kneeling on the ground and refusing to stand up. After contemplating for a moment, the Taoist said to Chen, "My magic is too limited to bring the dead back to life. I know someone who might be able to help you. You could try seeking his assistance." Chen asked, "Who is this person you're referring to?" The Taoist replied, "There's a madman in the market. He often lies in the filth. You can try begging him while kowtowing. However, if he insults you or goes into a frenzy and hits you, don't get angry." Wang Erlang was also familiar with the madman, so after bidding farewell to the Taoist, he went with his sister-in-law, Chen, to find the madman. They arrived at the market and saw a beggar begging for food, singing songs in a crazed manner. The beggar's nose was running, and his body emitted such a foul odor that it was unbearable to approach him. Upon seeing the beggar, Chen knelt down and moved her knees forward to his side. The beggar smiled and said to her, "Beautiful lady, do you love me?" Chen ignored him and proceeded to tell him about everything that had happened. The beggar laughed heartily and said, "Anyone can be your husband. Why bother saving him?" Despite this, Chen continued to plead. The beggar said, "Strange. Even in death, people come to me to be resurrected. Am I the king of hell?" With that, he angrily struck Chen with his begging stick. Enduring the pain, Chen withstood his strikes. At this point, the surrounding bystanders were confused about what was happening, and they began to gather around. The crowd in the market gradually grew, forming a wall of onlookers. The beggar yelled curses and even coughed up phlegm and saliva. He caught the saliva in his hand and, within moments, had a handful of it. The beggar raised the saliva-covered hand to Chen's mouth and told her, "Eat it." Chen's face turned bright red, showing her embarrassment and discomfort. However, she remembered the Taoist's advice not to be afraid of humiliation, so she forced herself to swallow the repulsive saliva bite by bite. She felt the phlegm moving down her throat, forming a lump that got stuck in her chest, unable to go any further. The beggar laughed again and said, "Beautiful lady, do you love me?" With that, he stood up and left, paying no more attention to Chen. Chen and Erlang followed the beggar to the temple, hoping to get closer to continue their pleas. However, as soon as the beggar entered the temple gate, he disappeared without a trace. Despite searching everywhere, they could not find the beggar anywhere. Frustrated and embarrassed, Chen and Wang Erlang returned home. Back at home, Chen was overwhelmed by grief at her husband's tragic death and the humiliation of having ingested someone else's saliva. She wailed to the heavens and begged for her own death. She wanted to clean the blood from her husband's body and prepare his body for burial, but her family members were too frightened to come near and stood at a distance. Chen had no choice but to pick up Wang Sheng's lifeless body and remove the organs that were hanging outside of his belly. As she cleaned, she sobbed loudly. When her cries became hoarse, she felt a strong urge to vomit. The lump in her chest suddenly surged up from her throat. She couldn't turn her head in time, and the thing she had expelled from her mouth ended up inside Wang Sheng's chest cavity. To her astonishment, she realized that she had actually spit out a human heart. The heart was pulsating thump-thump, within Wang Sheng's chest, emitting heat. Chen was utterly surprised and quickly used her hands to close Wang Sheng's chest. She squeezed the chest tightly together with her hands. If she relaxed her grip even slightly, she could see tendrils of hot air escaping through the gaps. Once she sealed the chest, Chen tore the bedding on the bed into strips and wrapped Wang Sheng's chest and abdomen tightly. At this moment, she touched Wang Sheng's body with her hands and noticed that it was gradually becoming warm. She then covered Wang Sheng with a quilt. In the middle of the night, she got up to check on Wang Sheng and discovered that he was already showing signs of breathing through his nostrils. The following morning, Wang Sheng miraculously came back to life. He said to Chen, "I had a dream that felt so vague. Now, I only feel a slight pain in my abdomen." He opened his clothes and looked at the spot where he had been wounded. He found that there was only a scar the size of a copper coin. Not long after, Wang Sheng's health miraculously recovered. The author concludes the story with a commentary. He says that people in the world can sometimes be truly foolish. Just like Wang Sheng, he clearly knew that the woman was a demon, but because of her beauty, he deceived himself into believing that she wasn't. Foolish people can be so stubbornly deluded. Even though the Taoist had given him advice, he was unwilling to believe it. However, he was captivated by her beauty, and his wife even had to endure punishment by ingesting someone else's saliva. Good and evil aspects of human nature will receive corresponding rewards according to the laws of heaven. It's just that those who are foolish and confused can never seem to wake up, which is truly pitiable. Alright. That's all for today's ghostly tale. Painted Skin. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Please also encourage everyone to comment and share more. We'll see you in the next episode.